Well, good morning everyone and welcome to the show. Today's show is going to involve an F-150. And I say this every time we talk about an F-150. Hold on, just wait. You're gonna wanna watch this because this isn't about an F-150. This is about the fact that you guys are before I get to that, Fernando.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. He was actually underneath the car. Anyway, this show is going to be about keeping that car longer than you might anticipate it. This is a 2008. Thank you. And he's like, you know what? I don't want to get rid of it. I really like my truck. It's fun. He got his seat fixed, you know, because like on the Fords, right here, getting in and out, kind of wears that. So he's like, I'm going to get this fixed. He did already. The system he put back in 2008, and it's old, and it's... Today, we're going to talk about upgrading your upgrade. So stay tuned. 2008, 2009. Who can remember that time frame? Fernando, what were you doing back then?
2008, 2009. Oof, I don't know, man.
Exactly, right? Well, I can tell you what I was doing. I was working at AVE Car Stereo here in Clearwater, Florida. And well, Pioneer had just come out with some really cool new radios. It was like, this was the cutting edge. They were talking about integrating cell phones and GPS, and it was one of the worst projects ever. It was a train wreck. The radio was horrible. It needed so many software updates, and that's when we really got introduced to software updates. AVIC 911 was just coming up. That's a forum group, and like they were telling Pioneer how to fix their radios. It was fun. No,
really?
no, it wasn't. It was fun at all. Well, this has a system in it from back then. So let's take a look and see what he's got and show you guys some classic car audio in the meantime, right? Oh, goody. One of the brands everyone just talks about nostalgically, and they make some really nice products right now, is Infinity. The Infinity Kappas. Ooh, who doesn't love that? These are the reference. It has this nice dome tweeter, but if you can kind of see, where's the tweeter facing? It's facing the floor. So it's not doing anybody any good. But up here, we have the factory tweeter. What we have is a coaxial mounted down here, a factory tweeter here. Yay! This somebody has already cut out. If you've seen one of these trucks before, there should be a piece of plastic that attaches to the door. It kind of looks like there might have been a 6.5 here at some point. I don't know. Either way, we're gonna make some new brackets for these, and we're gonna switch them out for some focal access, which once we get over the bench, we'll take a look at and show you all the cool little pieces that they have. Next thing on the chopping block is that Pioneer radio. This is the F900 BT. Looking at the install, when it was put in, they didn't properly shim the kit. You have this gap I can see into the dash. The knobs all wore off. I mean, this was the radio. Had an SD card. It was horrible. It simply was horrible. If any of you guys have had these, you know what I'm talking about. It took like forever to boot up. It was just, But let's pull it out and we'll take a look at what technology looked like back then. To remove this dash panel, simply open up the ashtray. Take your two fingers, push them here into the corners, and as you can see, this side pops up. This one's giving us a little fight, no problem. Take your plastic panel tool, which you can pick up on DNF tool drawer, stick it into the side, it'll come free. Manufacturers love to put clips right in the middle of the thinnest part of the plastic, and Ford is no different. There's two big metal clips right here, so be careful. Come up from behind, work it a little bit, and unplug it. One of the things on the F-150 dash is there's an airbag light here, and everyone always gets freaked out about airbag lights, and justifiably so. If you turn the car on with the airbag light disconnected in this particular vehicle, you'll get a light in the dash, which is expected. Once you plug it back in, it will clear itself out, so you have nothing to worry about there. Ooh, look at that 2-ton bag of crap in a 1-pound hole. Lots of wiring going on. In the Ford dash, you see this piece right here in the back that they didn't remove. That's a Sirius XM module. There's no reason to keep it in the dash. There's 4 7mm screws down the side here. Pull that thing out. If you're going to be adding new Sirius XM, that's no problem. Your antenna is right there, so you can easily reuse the factory antenna with a SAT1. Looking at the dash closely, they didn't use those back spacers. They only have 3 screw option going on. Oh, there's no screws here. I don't know why there's no screws there. Even back in 2009, they suck. Pull this guy out. Oh. Yeah, look at all this. So much fun. We got our GPS antenna, Bluetooth microphone, maybe steering wheel controls, main wiring harness, RCA harness, and then the USB, wired USB, which is crazy. Pioneer obviously doesn't do that anymore, which is nice. Thank you, Pioneer. We'll be reusing the dash kit. We'll just be fixing it so that it sits in the dash right. Get our harness out of here. They T-tapped in the VSS wire. That was cool. Oh, this is the steering wheel wire. Where did they put that? All right, so they cut the harness. Apparently they didn't know how to repin harnesses back then. I've been doing this a really long time and I still don't understand why people tape the RCAs like this. Never had RCAs behind a radio fall apart, short out, or cause any issues. And it's just disgusting. Grab a razor knife. Not that we're gonna be saving anything from this install. I mean, look at this, so much tape. Yeah, there we go. Here, cut this one. Ow! Dude, why did they use 12-inch extensions? Somehow the RCAs weren't long enough. If they would remove this, they would have had the room. All right, we got more stuff going on here. What is this? These are our mics. Can we cut this? Oh, that's our backup camera that doesn't work. Why do we have an accessory powering back in the factory accessory? Is this a smart harness radio? So we got an accessory going from the cigarette lighter into the main harness to power the car back up. That's not gonna be good. Oh goody, we're gonna have to figure that out. Then we have a constant 12 volts. Oh my gosh, what the heck is going on here? Backup camera wire. All right, so that's backup camera wire. All right, so the yellow was the reverse trigger. Let's get a 7 and get this out of here.
So what is this orange?
That was probably for the subwoofer.
Right.
So I'm assuming they cut off the sub wires, thinking they were something else. Oh, you know what? I get it. They were using this to power up the cigarette lighter. This is capped off. They were using the accessory from the radio to power up the cigarette lighter, probably so that the lighter would turn on and off with the key, because this is going to be constant 12 volts. Fix the harness, put this back together so that it's not all screwed up, solder the steering wheel control wire back into place. The radio's out, the Sirius XM tuner is out. As you can see now, we have tons of room for anything we want to do. I busted my knuckle, go figure. We've also pulled off the floor. Here's all the RCAs and speaker wire. I've pulled those out because naturally we're going to replace all those. And following with the trail of wire runs, let's head into the back and get the back seat out so that we can take a look and see what the amplifiers or amplifier looks like.
Yay.
Normally, to get the back seat out, you'd need to pull this top panel off and remove the screws. However, they didn't do that for some weird reason. The screws and the bolts and everything are here. I don't know what they did. Looks like it needs some washers though. When we go to put it back together, we'll make sure this is done the right way. We'll fix it. To get this back seat out is kind of a pain. On the new ones, you can come up here on the top, but on this one, there's a clip on that corner and on this corner. You got to kind of reach behind the seat, push down on the top of the seat like this, and then pull the clip back. And while you're holding it, lift up the seat. It took Fernando about 2 years to figure that one out.
Yeah.
If you don't get it on the first try, don't feel bad. The way this back area is laid out, on this side, if you have this square right here, and you can push on it and it doesn't move. This is a body control module. Usually it's the keyless entry system and whatnot, so you're not going over here. This bottom bracket here is the vent, which they left in over there on that side, which we'll probably have to remove and cover. And we have this giant big classic, so it looks like a 5-channel. It's a 5350A Infinity reference amplifier. Looks really nice. I know this lights up blue. It's falling apart. It's just been beat. We got some screws that went through the bed. They grounded it through the bed. That means if we go outside the car, I'm sure we can see those screws. We'll pull these screws and we'll put coverings over those so that water won't get in and do any more damage. We have 2 Rockford R2 power amps that are going to go back here to replace this. We'll take a look at those in a few minutes. Hopefully we'll be able to get them in that same area. This can move sometimes. We still are limited on space. But before we unscrew this, we want to go up underneath the hood and of course disconnect power. Normally you do that right at the beginning. However, the reason why we didn't do that is, well, let's go up there and I'll show you. When Fernando pulled the car in, this was laying on the floor in the front seat. This is where the ring terminal would normally be. This is all corroded and broken, like a CCA style. This might actually be CCA wire.
But it seems burned if you see it.
Well, it's been loose for a long time.
But let me show you why it was burned.
So we knew we didn't have to worry about disconnecting the battery.
Our terminal, right there.
There, yep, that awesome crimp.
Yep.
Good job.
So they ran the wire straight down here where my finger is, and next to it is the headers. Come on over here.
Oh, I gotta get old and get underneath.
I know. This is the wire going there. Like if you go this way right here.
Yeah, right next to the exhaust.
Next to the exhaust, going through the headers.
Yeah. So on this side of the heat shield, which is really stupid.
Now we pull it.
Oh. So the wire goes from red to black. I still think this is CCA though. All right, let's get it out of the car and we'll take a closer look at it. Oh, I gotta crawl out from underneath here. Fun. That is why we didn't have to worry about that from the get-go, but that is typically step one when doing anything, is disconnect that battery power wire. We'll pull that out of the car, take a closer look at it. It's like a 1/2-inch hole for a ring. Taking a closer look at what they did back in the day, this is definitely CCA wire. That would be why this corroded and fell apart, just brittle. End of the power wire that was burnt, yeah, as you can see, this is underneath. This is hard as a rock. And you can see here where it has melted. Let's see if we can get through this outer layer. This is like seriously hard cable at this point. Okay. Oh my gosh. Alright, so here's what we have. This is inside the wire. When we talk about how it turns to dust, this is that dust. This electrolysis here on the copper wire, or the copper outside, you can see it's all green. There's a cloud of just fine residue coming off of this. There's the inside where all that corrosion has happened. Oh my god, this is just so like amazingly stiff compared to over here where it isn't. That's gross. That's what happened to this power wire. This is why I don't use CCA. But hey, it took a while, I guess, right? He's had this in there for quite a long time. So good on him. You can see all the dust. This is all that powder here on the top of the amplifier. Looking closer at the RCAs, in the dash we had that pigtail. In the back we had another 3-foot pigtail. I'm guessing they just didn't have 3 of the same size RCAs like these blue ones here. We of course cut the heads off just because it was super hard to get them through. But these are stingers. These are the old stinger cables and they're directional. These are the HPM RCAs. So those were nice, but for some reason they ran this crappy black one. I don't understand. As far as this amplifier, which I know a lot of you guys that are old amplifier guys, you're gonna be like, oh, this thing's awesome. It probably was back in the day. Right now, not so much. To give us an idea of what this had, you had your front, sub, rear RCA inputs, gain controls, input source, front or rear, so you could pigtail this off of this RCA input. Low pass, full range, or high pass, adjustable between 32 and 320. We had a bass boost. Low pass crossover was 20 to 200. Same 32 to 320 here. You could add a bass knob. It was a nice amplifier. And you're looking at the ends, it has the crappy kind of connectors that I'm not a fan of, but back then you were gonna drill holes or whatever to mount your amplifiers. That was cool. But we're not gonna be using this. We got new amps. I had thought the amplifier was broke. It just has snaps that snap into place. However, it's not doing that anymore. That's why this is just kind of like flopping around. The last speaker we want to take a look at, of course, is the rear door speaker. Fernando's pulled off the door panel, and this is exactly how we found it. We haven't done anything. Be warned. He was complaining about some rattle.
I think I find the problem.
They had done the 2-screw option on this. As you can see, someone came in here previously and chewed this all up, which means we'll have to make some new panels. There was a screw here, drywall screw here, which is, you know, joy, but favored screw of installers everywhere. And then there was a drywall screw over here. If I'm to guess, what probably happened is there's no washer or anything like that, so eventually this popped off. As you can see, this one is ripped off. Because this was flopping around.
Look, I put my speaker without a screw.
So this probably popped off, and then once this started moving, it ripped this one off, which in turn caused it to fall into the door. We're probably going to want to switch out from 5x7s to 6.5s for the rear door.
Thank God they don't broke the window, because the window goes all the way down.
Yeah.
If this one was like,
yeah. Good times as always. It seems like this might actually be the 3rd system going into this car for some reason, because there's no way those are originals. Or what might have happened is the original system they put in it had the speakers had blown out. They just pulled those out. They just looked at it and said, oh, it's an F150, it's 5x7s and threw 4 5x7s in it. Who knows? Mysteries of the unsolved. The last thing to take a look at, though, is the subwoofer. Someone put a lot of effort into the subwoofer enclosure, and that's where it stopped.
I don't know what you're going to talk about, but like, first, they have...
Yeah, there's so much to talk, yeah.
they blew this one and the owners bought this and they just put it on like that.
So you can see we have this 2/8 fiberglass enclosure with some infinity speakers in it. And yes, you're going, wait a minute, what the hell is going on here? It had these in it originally, we can assume. I don't know, there might have been different 8s in there, but eventually these ended up in it. This blue, not this one, the one that was in this location blue. The newer version is bigger than the older version. They just wanted to get something in there. They put these risers on it. Of course, yes, the air is getting out. It doesn't fit in the box properly. It was sitting on top of the floor, doing absolutely nothing. As you can see, the woofer is destroyed. If you look here, you can see where it just ate up the carpet. This black residue here is from that piece of foam that fell off of the speaker. This is the factory subwoofer harness. We'll be replacing that, not with 2/8s. We're going to go with a 2/10s box that takes up the whole area underneath there and put some kicker comp RTs. And since we're talking about what's gonna go in to replace everything that we took out, let's take a look at all the equipment we're gonna put into it. First up, replacing the Pioneer radio, we're going to upgrade them to a Kenwood DDX 6706S. This is gonna have Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. It's going to give us a 13-band EQ along with time alignment, 4-volt preamp section, high-res audio compatibility. Got a lot of the newer features. It's also a CD DVD player. He's an older gentleman that still has CDs that he likes to listen to. He'll eventually phase those out because he's going to be going with modern phone type system. He wasn't prepared to just go at it wholeheartedly yet. It is a 6.1 inch screen. CD DVD at the top, volume controls over here on the side. We will be retaining his factory steering wheel controls for volume. There's going to be 2 amplifiers replacing his 5-channel. The first one up is the R2 504. This guy here. A couple nice features about this amplifier. It has RC inputs as well as high level to low level built into it. If you are going to be doing a factory integration, the high level to low level built into this is very nice. It also has current sense for remote turn on, looking for that DC offset. It comes with the plugs for the high level to low level, as well as an Allen key for the screws. Power wise, this comes in at 75 watts by 4 at 4 ohms, 125 watts by 4 at 2 ohms. Auto remote turn on and off for that high level installation. If you do decide you want to run some form of a remote turn on from it, let's say from a DSP or whatnot. Low pass, all pass, or high pass, variable crossover between 50 and 250. A 2-channel, 4-channel switch, so if you just want to use inputs 1 and 2, you can. If you're going to be using this to, let's say, run a set of components up front, just active. Front and rear crossovers use the same, 50 to 250. Gain controls between 1 and 11 volts. The amp for the subwoofers is going to be the R2 750.1. Yes, as you can guess, it's a 750 watt amplifier. It uses high level to low level as well. It has the same high level to low level circuit built into it as the other amplifier. Comes with the Allen keys. 4 ohms, it's 250 watts. At 2 ohms, it's 500 watts. And to get that 750, you want to run it at a 1 ohm load. Closer look at the top of the amplifier. Remote turn on and off, just like the 4-channel. Punch EQ for that full big fat bass sound. 50 to 250 on the crossover. It has an infrasonic or subsonic filter between 15 and 40 hertz, as well as the gain controls between 1 and 11 volts of input. On the side of the amplifier, you'll see the RLC. That's the punch volume control for it. Even though it's a mono amplifier, it does give you 2 positives and 2 negatives outputs to go to your subwoofer if you're doing a box that has 2 speaker cups. The punch volume knob is new for the R2 line. Very nice, very small, very compact. If you pull these 2 screws off of it, this whole thing will come apart, so you can flush mount it into the dash. And of course, it comes with a 20-foot cable. Inside there's also a bag of screws and parts. This is the screw for flush mounting it. Comes with washers, as well as the 2 screws if you're going to surface mount it. For the rear door, since we're going to have to make a custom mount anyways, we've decided to go with a set of the Access 6.5 inch coaxials. This has a swivel tweeter, so we won't run into the problem like they did with those Infinities. We can mount them up like this, and then we can aim them towards the passenger in the rear seat so that they're not distracting the driver with this tweeter aimed towards him. It is a bi-ampable speaker if you would like to. That's what these wires here for. You can either snip them here and wire in an amplifier just to the tweeters, and or go full coaxial onto the inputs here. It uses a woven style cone, a metal tweeter. The basket is made out of a composite, and as you can see, it has a decent sized magnet. For the front doors, we are going to go with the matching Access. You have a nice phase plug here made out of metal. Same composite cone. It's basically identical to the rear speaker, just just as a component. Parts that it comes with are 2 passive crossovers. Inside the passive crossovers you have the tweeter attenuation between -3 and +3, as well as 0 in the middle. It is not a bi-amped crossover. It has inputs, woofer output, tweeter output. The tweeter is the same that comes in the coaxial. They're identical. The nice metal tweeter. It comes in a flush mount. There are little brackets to allow this to snap into place. It also comes with a bag of screws and a surface angle mount that is designed to either mount like this or like that, so you can have it like sitting up on the dash in the corners if that's what you'd like to do, blowing at your face. One of the questions we constantly get is like fast rings and foam and all the stuff that we do on the door panels. Is it totally worth it? Are you gonna get the best sound out of the car? You know, we always say yes and people debate it and whatnot, but I can tell you right now with authority that this type of an installation is guaranteed to give you a crappy sound output. There's no way that this speaker is doing anything other than making some form of a crappy noise, for sure. That is pretty sad.
All right, so the factory has 5x7. I don't see the reason why you cut it that much.
I think it was cut beforehand. I think there was a previous set of speakers in here and someone just...
If you have a 6.5, the only thing you have to cut is top and bottom, not the size.
I agree. Maybe somebody tried to fit a 6x9 in here. I don't know. Somebody tried to put a bigger speaker in this and then these found their way in here somehow.
I'm gonna put a 12 in here.
Okay, whatever works for you. Or some 8s.
Like...
Oh wow, that's just gnarly.
What kind of shape is this?
I don't know. Putting new speakers in this is definitely going to be fun because we're gonna have to come up with a new mounting system. As you can see here, like this is bent out. We're gonna have to bend that back in flat. And we're gonna have to come up with a way to remount these speakers in here so that they can go into this. Lots of fun. Fernando has the front door off on the passenger side. Oh, what the?
They get tired.
Okay, get totally tired.
They get tired. It's like, okay, that's it. I'm done.
What the heck?
I'm not doing it anymore.
So we have 3 random screws. Oh my gosh. All right, what the heck? Why did they even do that? That's what I'm telling you, there had to be something going on in this car prior to this installation.
Yeah, like...
It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Like, literally...
Oh, the speaker goes right in. That's what I'm telling you.
It goes right in.
So
you don't even have to cut it. What was the reason to cut it?
I don't know, but we're gonna have to remove it, so it doesn't matter.
I know. We
are concocting a plan. However, I wanted Fernando to get all the doors off so we could kind of look at all of them to figure out the mysteries of what we have. The driver's front door is now off, and they cut a smiley face bigger thing here. Here's the idea that I've been working with. We want to make one bracket for all 4 doors. The front doors have a bigger area that is nice and flat for us to mount to. Whatever we come up with, this is obviously going to be the easier one of the 2. When looking at the back door, as you can see here, there's this lip that they kind of gnawed away. I don't want to go back in here and cut this all out. It just seems like putting worse time into the situation. It just doesn't make any sense. The plan is to add some blue tape over the surface of this. And then from there, we're going to trace out this basic shape, and then we're going to transfer that over to a piece of plastic. So let's start there first. As we can see with the blue tape on, we can use this to mark our area as far as how big our new adapter needs to be. We want to trace this high point along here, along the top here. This area here is fine. Come out. As you can see, he's already marked this area. We want to make sure that our adapter doesn't get in the way of that. This gives us our outside shape. The next step is to peel this off the door carefully. We'll transfer that onto a piece of plastic. We'll get it all straightened out, and then we'll cut this shape out and we'll test fit it back in. And then we have a couple more things we need to do to make it how I want it to fit. This is the basic shape we're looking for. I want to cut this out, and this is going to be our template for the rest of them that we're going to make. Let's go test fit it on the door. For the rear doors, this shape is exactly what I was looking for. It's out to this edge. There's still a gap here though. The next step is to make a second one of these, but I'm only gonna make it to where it's 3/8 of an inch. So the center is gonna be cut out. That'll go over this whole piece. We could screw it into this and it'll take in consideration all this jagged mess that we have to deal with. It'll just cover the whole thing up and then sit flush on this nice flat metal. To do that, I need to router out a second one of these. To attach this to our new square piece, we're gonna use some of the Mobile Solutions template tape. Make sure to press firmly. Check your bearing height. Now we have an exact copy. We need to scribe in a 3/8 line all the way around this. To do that, I'm gonna use a compass. Simple compass, got a pointer on one end and a pencil on the other. And I'm just gonna go around the edge like so with my compass, and that will give me the exact size I need. And that is now traced on there. I'm just gonna use the Rockwell upside down jigsaw to do that. Get a starter hole. And we have our shape. The idea is this. Now this should go over and cover all that nonsense. Go check. So I got one spot right here that I need to thin out, but otherwise, this will do the trick. I want to check it on the front door and see how it works there. The front door doesn't need this. I'm just using this so I can see how flat it's going to sit on the surface here. This sits nice and flat. It's not like it couldn't use it because it does need to come out some from the door panel. Either way, this shape is gonna work in all 4 doors. All I have to do now is router a bunch of these out and also make the hole in the center for the 6.5 that we're gonna be using. Good news. The back brackets are assembled, put together. This is what we're looking at here. Next is to add some foam to this side. The speaker itself, we'll put the foam on that once we get to it. All foamed up. I'll get these over to Fernando so that he can get these into the car. Once we get to that point, we'll head back over and take a look at the finished product. The fronts don't need that extra piece. Made our holes, added our foam to the back. They'll sit flush up against the car. We may need to put a spacer on here to bring it further into the door panel. We'll wait and see once we get to that point what these need, but these are now ready to get into the car. Let's take a look at how we're going to be doing the front door. We've made the panels. The first step is to figuring out where they go. To do that, Fernando put the door panel on because the grill was missing that there. He was able to line it up and down. What he did is he put double-sided tape on the back of this and was able to stick it into place until he found the right height. Once he found the right height, he pulled the door panel back on and used 4 self-tapping screws to screw it into place. Now those aren't the finished product. Those are just so we know where to put in our nut certs. The next step is to add the nut certs. What are nut certs, you're asking? A nut cert is a threaded rivet. It's going to get stuck into the door. This lined area here will get compressed. That will allow us to screw in and unscrew that panel as many times as we want without it stripping out or doing anything bad like that. The self-tapping screws were just a temporary placeholder. With all 4 nut certs now in place, we can screw our panel in permanently using M5 threaded screws with washers. At this point, let's pause on getting the speaker in the door, and let's hop over to the door panel and take a look at that tweeter location. The reason why we want to do that is a lot of these trucks don't have that tweeter, and you can add it, but here's what you need to know. First thing, you have to make sure that that top grill is perforated like this one is. Some of them aren't. If they're not, you're gonna have to mount the tweeter on this area here, which this isn't flat and it's not gonna look as good. You can do it, or get your hands on the perforated grill. To replace these speakers with a 5x7, the nice thing about it is you pop that grill off and then you can just easily unscrew and screw in the 5x7. You don't actually have to take the door panel off, but to do the tweeter, you have to take the door panel off. This is the location for the tweeter. Now the nice thing is it's easy enough to put a flush mount tweeter into this, which is what we're going to be doing. Get your flush mount cup up like this here. And then of course, see if it fits into the hole. I'm gonna spoil it for you that most of them aren't gonna fit in the hole. It'd be really nice if you could just grind this hole out equally and slide this in, but you can't because of this right here. What you wanna do is you want to grind it slowly, but just grinding this bottom area until you get it so that this will fit into place. That way that the top of this mount will rest on here. For this we'll be using a grinder. To grind it, come from the bottom. Don't come from the top, because if the grinder is to get crazy, it could, you know, like, scratch the whole top of the door panel. You want to do that. After a few back and forths with the grinder and a few test fittings, it will pop right into place. You don't want it loose, you want it tight, you want it to kind of snap into place. Most of these now are going to come with some way to mount them. This Focal tweeter happens to use the old tried and true tooth method. If yours uses this and the tweeter will come apart, make sure to take the tweeter apart before you try to put this on. It just makes things a little bit easier. The idea behind this is to snap over the opening and sandwich the front ring with this new added back ring. The flathead screwdriver is very handy for getting it in place. Once you have it firmly mounted in place, twist the tweeter back in. Of course, rotate it so that the logo is facing the right direction. And there you have it, the tweeter is now in. The tweeter is now wired up in place. There's a connection here if we ever need to service it. Then that wire is zip tied over to here, and hidden up underneath here is our crossover. The crossover is mounted to this frame rail here, which is a weld point. The other side of this doesn't go through the door panel, so we were able to add in 3 screws here, and then the crossover is mounted firmly into here. The reason why it is mounted here is so that weather won't affect it. It's in a dry area. We've added this 4-pin plug to it so that the door panel can plug in and unplug if it needs to be serviced. For some reason Ford decides they need to service this door. By pulling the door panel off, it'll unplug, which we'll show you as soon as we mount the speaker. Let's head over and do that. Inside the door panel we have our speaker wire. Clip our speaker into place. We've used shrink wrap to denote positive and negative. Pre-drilled the holes. Now it's just a matter of lining them up and screwing it in. This is the other end of our plug. Just like the factory has all these plugs that are going to be removed when you need to take the door panel off, our plug will also be able to remove, so you can easily service this whole area here. Click it into place, and then finish assembling the door panel. Here's what the final product looks like. Snap the grill in place, and we'll be done with this door.
Now to the back door.
For the rear door, we basically have the same process. He's already gone ahead and figured out where the panel needs to go and added in our nutsert rivets. This panel is a little different from the front. As we said earlier, we added in the extra 1/4 of an inch to compensate for all of the nonsense that's here. We need a little bit longer screw than we needed for the front. The panel pulls nice and tight and covers all of the chewed up metal and gives us a nice flat area to mount our speaker to. These are coaxials, so we don't have a big passive crossover putting anywhere. Fernando already has the wire with the ends on them. Pre-drill the screw holes. Pro tip, put your finger over the surround, just like Fernando's doing here. That's because your finger, well, you can put a band-aid on it and it will eventually heal. The speaker, it never will. The last step is to aim the tweeter. We're gonna turn it towards the back. And the very last step is to put the door panel back on. And now we've managed to take a very weird situation. Would you agree, Fernando?
Yes.
We still haven't figured out what's going on and why they did that. As it turns out, the customer bought the car and it already had this stuff in it. Who knew? Right? He'll get that last door panel on. The reason they ran the power wire up that and did the hole through the floor and all that nonsense was so that they didn't have to run the power wire all the way across the back of the car, up the driver's side, and then back over to the passenger side of the car. Seems like an excess amount of wire to be used. However, in some cases you have to do that because it's almost impossible to get through the firewall on the passenger side. Almost impossible, but not impossible, especially when you have a Fernando. He's come up with a plan so that we don't have to do that. And of course, so that we don't have to destroy the power wire on the headers. The first step was removing the whole battery tray, getting this out. As As you can see, that has never been done, but that gave us access to the firewall, and that allowed him to drill our 2 4-gauge holes into the firewall from the outside in. Doing that can be scary. You don't want to just like, yeah, go for it. Drill 2 pilot holes, which is what he did. Take an 1/8" drill bit, barely goes through, and then you take your probe and you send it through to make sure that there's nothing on the other side. Before you even make the pilot hole though, is you're doing a lot of investigation around that area to make sure that there's nothing there and that you feel confident to make the pilot hole.
Yeah, I mean, you go in the inside and you see it's a piece of carpet that you have to remove, definitely. Right here, this is a piece of carpet. You remove it, you got plenty of space. The factory wiring harness goes in the top. You drill in down.
This will allow us to come out here, safe distance from the engine, put the battery tray back in, we'll make our fuse mounts, and we'll be able to use a normal length power up the passenger side of the car. While we had the battery and tray out, Fernando used that opportunity to make a mount that attaches to the actual tray, because there's really not a lot of places to mount this fuse bracket to. That means we will take the battery in and out for service with no issues, but this is now permanently part of the whole apparatus. We have 2 fuse holders we're going to put here, so there's plenty of room to do that. You can reinstall the battery back into place. Along with the dash kit, the other piece we're going to recycle is the main wiring harness. Pull the tape off. If you get one of these, it's all sticky gooey with tape. Mineral spirits and a rag will clean all this stuff off, not make it so disgusting. We're gonna remove this T-tap here, solder the wire back into place. We need to go into the car and also fix the wiring that's cut. A lot of the times on these Fords, they have this power antenna wire and usually an amplifier turn-on wire that don't go to anything in an F150. These are easy enough to pull out and repin for those steering wheel wires. I want to see if this has an amplified antenna or an amplifier turn on or anything like that. Simply count the pins here. This is 3 over. Flip and check. There's nothing in pin 3. We can remove this and use this for our steering wheel control wire, which is this cut blue-red wire here that we'll solder back together, and of course remove this T-tap. We are going to be retaining the steering wheel controls. The module he had in there was specifically for a Pioneer. We're now switching to a Kenwood. We're going to be updating that to an SWI CP2. To get our instructions, we just go to the Control Pro app on our smartphone and type in our make, model, and year. It'll tell us the dip switch settings to put on the side of the unit, as well as all the wiring that we're going to need to do. The reason why I wanted to check this real quick is on some of the Fords, there's 2 wires for steering wheel. There's a ground wire and there is the steering wheel wire. The blue-red is the steering wheel wire. There's also a green-orange next to it that will need to be grounded. I'm gonna hop back in the car and see if that wire exists in the harness. I just hopped in to check, and there is in fact a green-orange wire that will need to be grounded. That means I don't have enough pins available. I'm gonna check my spare pin box that I have. I'm sure I have an extra one. Most of the time when you get this harness new, there is 2. There's someone probably removed that extra one from here. Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward connection. On this Kenwood harness, we have all 8 speaker wires that we will not be using. We'll just be using these. Our amplifier is gonna connect up to these here. This also has the blue-yellow steering wheel control input from our CP2. It has an orange-white illumination. There is a blue-white that is going to power up our amplifiers, so we'll run that back. A black ground, a yellow constant 12 volts, a red accessory or key, and there is also a blue wire for that amplified antenna if it did have it, which it doesn't, so this will just get capped off as well. And then there's the light green emergency brake wire that requires a ground to access the menus in the radio. Purple-white, a positive reverse trigger. To repin this harness, you can see the red piece inside of there goes all the way down to the side. Flathead screwdriver, push up on each side and then reach in with the tip and you can pull it out. There's a little tooth on the top with a pin extraction tool. Push up on that and you can pull your wire out. Just like that. Next, relocate it into the proper hole. When looking at the app on the phone, it gives you a layout of where the pins need to go. Find something simple like the constant 12 volts, in this case, which is 1 here in the corner. Lay your harness appropriately. 13 should be ground, which it is. You can come over into this bottom corner over 1. 19 is going to be the ground. 18 is going to be our steering wheel in wire. Clip the wires into place and make sure that they are straight. Replace in the red clip lock. Just push down on it from the 2 corners and our harness is all set and ready to go. With the Control Pro app up, I need 2 blacks, the yellow, red, and the white red wires to retain my steering wheel controls. The rest are not going to be used. The red, the yellow, and one of the blacks are going to get connected to constant 12 volts accessory and ground. The second ground and the white with a red stripe are going to go to our steering wheel wires. I like to separate those wires out. Pack gives you a pretty lengthy run of wire. Figure out where you're going to need to put your steering wheel control module, where it's going to need to get tucked in the dash, and then trim the wires accordingly. There's no reason to use all 2 feet of wire if you don't need it. In this harness, they did have that T-tap on. I've cut the wire off. I'm adding in a new piece of wire to that point. Our red-white wire from the steering wheel interface is going to go to the blue antenna wire that we repinned. I had an extra harness that I was able to remove a random wire from. That is going to be my ground. The wires are soldered up for the steering wheel control. I do need to go back because I hadn't flicked my dip switches yet. I like to fast forward to what my wiring is going to look like before I do that. Now they're set, I like to add a piece of tape over them. I'm a big fan of testing my steering wheel controls before the end to make sure that they are at least registering. In the end of the installation, if you've missed something, it's no fun to have to pull everything back apart. Put some tape over your positives so they don't accidentally touch the ground. Let's hop in the car and see if this thing works. I fixed the harness, resoldered all the wires together so that we could do this test. Plug it in. This has a LED here. When you plug it in, it should start blinking green. Turn the car on. Lights up red. When I press one of the buttons on the steering wheel, it should blink green, registering that it is communicating with the steering wheel. The Ford only has 4 buttons to use. Press all 4 buttons. I'm not worried about what they're doing. I just want to make sure that it's registering to this module. In some cases, you'll have cars where there's multiple buttons. Let's say in a Nissan, if your phone control buttons don't work, that's telling you that there's a Bluetooth module that needs to be bypassed somewhere in the car. That's why we do this test. But this one works fabulously. I can finish getting the harness done now. Harness is all set and ready to go. Main end that's going to plug into the back of the radio. All the wires we're not going to use are capped off and shrink wrapped into a bundle. Our steering wheel control is teed off over to here all by itself. That way we'll be able to mount this in the dash. There was a reverse wire trigger coming up to the front for the backup camera that doesn't work. We put a provision on here to attach that to. This is our pigtail that our amplifier speed wire is going to come and connect to. I loop over the remote turn on into this, so it just comes through here, loops over and comes out this way. That's why you don't see an extra remote turn on wire hanging out. It's time to figure out how to mount these amplifiers. And the first thing I need to do is, well, figure out if they're gonna fit. To do that, got a tape measure, and we'll measure across the amplifiers. We need about 20¼ inches to mount them like this, which to me is the preferred method to mount them. The area where they had the previous amplifier mounted is going to be the best place to try and make this happen. I've already cut a piece of plastic and fit it into place. Let's see if we have enough room. This is a 1/4 inch piece of blown PVC. I have 2 nut certs here in place with these screws so I can take this in and out as many times as I want. I went as far over to this side as I can, contouring the piece to match the factory panel, as well as contouring it to match this area here where the motor comes in. I need that 20¼ inches space. Looks like I'm okay. Where this piece here comes into the board, the amplifier could sit over the top of this because I'm going to angle the amplifiers up a little bit on the bottom. It shouldn't be a problem mounting it over to this side. While I was over here working and trying to figure it out, I also covered up the holes that they had going to the outside of the car so we won't get any water in through those. These top ones here, this is a tube, so where we've put our nut certs, they're not actually exposed to the outside of the car, which is really nice. There's also this piece of foam that gaskets around the vent here, which is good because our piece is going to come right up onto this, therefore I don't need to remove this. We're not going to get any water in the car from this. I need to get this panel over there, mount the amps into place, bring it back into here, screw it into place, put the seat in, and make sure that the seat clears the amps. That'll be my first step into making sure that this will all work the way I want it to. Attaching the amps to this board, there is a rhyme and reason to it. I want the 4-channel closest to the driver's side and the mono block closest to the passenger side. The reason for that is that this power wire is going to go this way into the car. Speaker wires are going to go straight down and underneath the seat in this area, but all my signal and speakers are going to go this way. If I put the amplifiers like this, then all that wire is going to pass in front of the power section here, and it just doesn't make any sense. So make sure when you're laying your amplifiers out, you take that into consideration. I want to try to go somewhat low because of the way the seat tapers towards the back. And then I'm going to shim this so that the amplifiers ride up like this, because these amplifiers, the way the wire comes out, yeah, it's a whole nother story. But either way, I want to raise this front up just a little bit so that I'll have enough of a bend in there for the wires to come down. I like to measure, make sure that the amps are straight on the board. As you can see, risers here in the front, mounted flat in the back. Let's test fit it in the car. I'm gonna grab the seat, we'll slide that in. Test fitting the seat, getting it into place. We just have to be careful here with this, what lines up the whole seat so that it goes in straight. When we go to put it in, we have to make sure we tip it up first, move it back into place and slide it down. Then we won't have any issues with this getting in the way. Otherwise, it fits in splendidly. Next step is to, of course, pull the amplifiers back out, get them over to the workbench, start prepping the wires. But before I do that, I need to figure out where the wires are going to go. And let me show you what I mean. The panel meets up with this panel, and there's no gap anywhere around here. And the reason why it's like that is because of the gasket that is for the vent that's here. We have 2 power wires that need to run this way, and that's it though, just 2. The reason why I have to figure it out is I want to bring both those power wires into this area down here and not up into this area. They need to come in here and then turn and go into the car this way. The ground wires can be out here. More than likely we're going to be grounding it here or somewhere in this area. The RCAs, they're all going to go that way. So there's plenty of room for those to get up and tucked and grab into the frame and do what they need to do for that side. Is there enough room to fit 2 pieces of 4 gauge right through here? Moving this up and lining that back up. Just need to keep them below this right here, which I can put a slight little mark in with my finger, and we're all good. Now we can get this over to the bench and start wiring it up. So what I've done is I've gone and prepped all my wiring that I'm going to be using for this. Put the sleeving over it, ferrules on the ends for most of it, shrink wrap, all the good stuff. When applying them to the amplifier board, we kind of have to do it in stages, meaning certain things have to run under certain things. Stuff's going to be on top, obviously. So you have to figure that out. I break it into 3 sections: my input, my output, and my main power, and I'll work one section until I'm done and move on to the next section. Because the signal wire and everything is going to be going off this way, this RCA has to pass underneath all of this. That means that is going to be the lowest, closest to this plastic wire I need. I'm going to start with that. Specifically with this RCA, these RCAs, then I'll move on to my speaker output, and lastly I'll end up at power. The RCAs we'll be using in this is the Stinger 4000 series. I like to run my finger over the RCAs to flatten them out. That way I can put them in and they won't be twisted. This is going to pull tight to the amplifier like this on the route over. I'm going to be using my wire ruler to add in all my holes. Because I'm going to be working really close in this, I'm going to use an awl, poke my center points on these holes that I'm going to drill. I like to line the edge of my wire ruler up with the holes that I just poked, and that'll give me enough distance. I'm going to be using 4-inch zip ties, which means I need a 9/64 drill bit. Let's drill some holes. When adding in your zip ties, for this we can have the heads out the back side. We want to make sure that all the heads are lined up closest to this amplifier here, so that they're going to come in, they're going to go like this, and that head will sit back along this row. That way we can drill another hole along here and we can put another in. That way the heads all stay uniform and keep our holes vacant so we can keep adding more layers into it. Do the same on the rear and front RCAs. untwist them, plug them in. We put shrink wrap on the heads of our RCAs so that they are color coded to match the standard wire coloring. For example, this is green. This tells us this is driver's rear. Purple tells us passenger rear. White is driver's front, and gray underneath it is passenger front. These RCAs are going to follow the run that already exists. At some point, I'm gonna have to turn these and bring them down. It's a matter of figuring out where I want to turn these RCAs. And for that, I'm just gonna take a quick look in the car and figure out routing. I really just need to get them down towards the end here at the very end. So this, and then have them turn like that. I'm gonna come back in here and finish off the routing of this RCA. That's why I made the shorter version of the wire ruler, so that for short runs like this, you don't have to sit here and try to, you can just get it with this guy. Now that I'm away from the amplifiers, I can just drill directly through. Add in the holes for this next row of RCAs. I'm gonna stack them on top of one another, so they're gonna be the same width as this. And this is what I was talking about. Now we have another row of holes for zip ties. When we put those through, and the head will fill in that first hole we have, and then we can just keep going down, just like we have shown over here. The next wire in the run is going to be our speaker / remote turn-on wire. And why the remote turn-on wire is included in this is because we use speed wire, and that wire has a remote turn-on ran through it. I've already gone ahead and zip tied that wire down into place. As you can see, it follows the RCA. These wires are all going that way. What I need to finish off is attaching these to the amplifier. We have the purple, we have the green, we have the white, and the gray. With the speed wire, I like to twist the wire into place like I've done here. Although I'm going to be untwisting it a bit because we need to figure out where the wire is going to attach at the amplifier. I try to go a little bit long. You know, you don't want to cut it too short. Once you feel you have what you need, you can attach it to the amplifier. To do that, we are going to be using some ferrules. For those of you that have never heard of ferrules, a ferrule is a sleeve that goes over the wiring. And the purpose of that sleeve is to keep those little tiny fine wires from getting all tore up in this style connector. I also like to add a piece of red and black shrink wrap to the end, just so I know which one is positive and negative at a glance. In the car, the black stripe on the wiring can sometimes be difficult to see. One of the new features with this R2 series amplifiers is clean in and out. And the reason why I'm talking about this circuit now, it has to do with my speaker outputs. You don't want to have the amplifier connected to the speakers when running these tests. If you're going to do it back here at the amplifier, meaning just unplug these wires, don't over tighten these right now. Just put them in loosely to hold the ferrule in place. And there we go, our wiring is set. So we want to move on to the power wire side here. And here's the finished product. What I did was added in my holes here on this side and this side. This ground wire comes across here and goes down. This ground wire comes across here. So I ran the power wires first so that the grounds could go over the top of them. The reason why they're coming over here is because this area in the car is where I'm going to have my two grounds, and the power wire, as we talked about earlier, is going to be able to sit flat like this and go into the side panel and out of the way. We have our signal, our speaker wires, our remote turn-ons, our power wire. The last thing, and I didn't mention this, is because I always forget about it, are two things. The bass knob that goes here is going to run along this route, and the sub wire. I don't know why. This is always like, I'm so excited to get all this done. I'm like, yeah, I'm done. No, I'm not. Ran two 16 gauge. They're going to go to the side of the box and added some braided sleeve over it. This goes positive, negative, positive, negative. That's important because on some of the sub amps that are mono like this that have a dual terminal, it's a mono terminal. It's just so that you can hook up 4 wires. It's not like it has to be bridged. It's not anything like that. It's just they give you 4 terminals to hook up 4 individual wires. Some of them will do dual positive, dual negative. So pay attention to that when you're doing it. Nothing sucks worse than getting to the end and going, why don't I have any sub? And then going back and looking at it and going, oh, For this, I'm using the 16 gauge Stinger wire, and the nice thing about that wire is it lays flat on top of one another, and I can put the black and red on here and not have to worry about which pair is which pair. If you were doing something like a stereo amplifier, in this case it wouldn't matter because, like I said, it's just a bus in the back, so you got ground on ground, positive on positive, it'll work. On these, we can tighten these up because we won't have to unscrew these to do our distortion test. We just leave the subwoofers unplugged. I'm going to add in the zip ties and start running the route for the bass knob and the finished product. Sub wires in, bass knob wire zip tied in place. Taking all the wire that's going to be going up in the dash and added some braided loom to it. Where it's going to run in the back of the car, there is an opportunity, even though we're going to tuck it up out of the way, there's a huge area there where it's just going to be behind like carpet. And there's a chance for it to be exposed, so adding this extra layer of protection to it is obviously a good idea. The last thing that we need to do before we get this into the car is do what we call a pre-tune. We're not actually tuning or anything like that. We call it a pre-tune because it's just the easiest thing to call it. It's where you go through and you check all your gains and switches to make sure they're preset up for what's going to come in the future. Turn the punch EQ down. I'm going to preset my crossover here to 80 Hertz. Turn your gains down. On the high pass amplifier, turn your high pass crossover on. And these are all just preliminary setups. These are made to be changed. 4-channel, 2-channel switch, make sure that's in the right location. The reason why we do this on all our installations is so once we get this into the car, we're going to turn it on and see if we have sound. We're also going to check our balance and fader. By having at least a generic crossover setting put in there, if something was to go catastrophically wrong, let's say the radio is bad and it just like throws the volume all the way up, it's happened, we at least have some form of a safety measure in place to not blow out the speakers. Let's take a closer look at this and then we'll get it into the car. I'm going to ground the amplifiers in this area right here. These have ring terminals on them. Obviously these are way longer than they need to be. We'll cut these to length and add in our own new ring terminals. With the ring terminal added, I like to put heat shrink on the end of the wire just to finish it off. For grounding the amplifier, we use a kit from positiveground.com. It's a 3-step process. In the kit, you get a star washer and a self-tapping screw. It's more of a self-threading screw. There's also nuts in the kits if you want to put it in from the backside. The first is this tapered drill bit. We have to drill a hole into our metal with that. The next step is this. This is a wire brush and it has a center pin in it that's gonna line up with that hole we just drilled and give us a nice clean area. And last is the nut driver to tighten it into place. And there you have it, a super ground that we'll never have any problems with. With the power side taken care of, it's time to run the signal, speaker wires, and everything else up the driver's side of the car and get them into the dash. This radio has CarPlay and it's a wired CarPlay, so we need a USB somewhere convenient in the front of the dash. For that, we're going to be using the USB DMA1, which is a 12-inch pigtailed flush mount USB. We also have the bass knob. On the F150, they have this cool area right here, which is just screaming for it to go on to. The problem is his is broke, which means if we mount it here and you go to pull, like I can't even pull out the cigarette lighter without this is falling off. It's okay though, we're gonna fix it. Plan is to mount the USB here and our bass knob in the middle. This is already falling out. So we need to get this out so that we can mount our USB into it without, of course, breaking this whole panel. It gently will snap out. We need to remove this collar off of here because we're gonna need that to go into here. To mount my bass knob, I need to remove this piece right here so I can have a nice flush mount. Find my center point. I use a silver Sharpie to do that. Pull the bass knob off, remove the 2 screws from the bottom, and the guts of this will pop right out. For the most part, you could just use this the way it is, put it in. We have the bag of screws to tighten it up. However, we're going for longevity here. What we like to do is take heat shrink and put 2 layers of heat shrink over this whole thing, making it just a little bit stronger. Sometimes, depending on the bass knob, we'll also take CA glue and put it all around this seam here to give it an extra layer of rigidity. I'll let that sit and cool down, and while that's happening, I'll drill my hole. I like to use a step bit for that. Don't apply a lot of pressure, let the bit do the work. You don't want this thing to crack in half as you're drilling through it. It's happened before, it really sucks. Do it from both sides to deburr it. Test fit as you go. You don't want to make the hole too big. Grab the little parts bag that has our washer and nut on it. Get those both on there. Tighten it down. Now this is not an infinite spin. It has a stop and a start point. I like to turn it until I get my logo just right. As far as logo placement, that's entirely up to you. If you want it to where it's all the way up, the logo is the right direction, you can do that. To lock this back into place, we're going to be using some hot staples. These are made to bond plastics back together. They come in different shapes and sizes depending on the intended purpose, but they're perfect for something like this. As you're putting them in, just kind of wiggle them into place. They get super hot and they'll melt right in. Let them cool for a couple minutes. They have little legs that are going to stick off the back depending on which ones you get. Some you have to cut, some will easily break off. Do a little test fitting. As you can see here, we've added them to the lock points. The metal now has woven between the 2 pieces of plastic and joined it and made it one. The subwoofer in this car is going to be a pair of Rockford P3 shallow dual 4-ohm speakers. The dual 4-ohm part is very important so that we can get that 1-ohm load. If you do get a Rockford subwoofer of any kind, it's going to have a metal trim. That's what all these yellow stickers are telling you. Pull the box out and as you can see underneath is a trim. They also give you really nice screws. Well, I recommend strongly using the screws that they give you. This is a dual voice coil and it's a dual 4-ohm voice coil. Let's back it up. Dual voice coil. That means on this there's going to be 2 sets of leads. Voice coil 1, voice coil 2. And they both have to be used in order for the speaker to work properly. Depending on how you wire these 2 up, you're going to get different ohm loads. And this is where people get really confused. We need a 1-ohm load to get the maximum power out of that amplifier. We're going with 2 subwoofers. How do we get a 1-ohm load? 2 2-ohm loads in parallel will give us that 1-ohm load. We have 2 dual 4-ohm. Oh, what are we doing? Can we make this a 2-ohm driver? Actually, yes. There's 2 ohm loads that you can manipulate a dual 4-ohm driver to be. If I connect both positives, both negatives together, will give me a 2-ohm driver. If I put a jumper across 1 positive and 1 negative and then connect my outputs here, that will give me an 8-ohm driver. If I make this 8-ohm and I make the other one 8-ohm, that'll give me a 4-ohm driver. If I make this 2-ohm and the other one 2-ohm, then I will get that 1-ohm that I need at the amplifier. If I was to have a dual 2-ohm driver, they're not going to work and get me a 1-ohm load. I have 2 options as far as the ohm load I can get out of a single dual 2-ohm driver. If I connect both positives and both negatives, I'll get 1 ohm. If I connect 2 1-ohm drivers together, that's going to give me a 1/2 ohm load. That's not going to work on this amplifier. If I connect 1 negative to a positive with a jumper and then come off of here to my amplifier, that's going to give me a 4-ohm load. 2 4-ohm loads together give me a 2-ohm load, not what we want on this amplifier. For us, we need to wire up our speaker cups with a wire going off to each positive and a wire going off to each negative. We have 2 runs of wire. I like to use 2 different colors, one for one voice coil, one for the other. Soldering the wire in place, adding a little bit of shrink wrap to go over the ends. With that end attached, we move off to the other end, strip these back, grab a wire ferrule, add it into place. The last step I like to do is add a little bit of fleece tape to it, more just so that these 2 wires don't rattle around in the box. You could also use foam tape or anything like that, that'll just quiet it down. And there's the wire all set and ready to go. On the Stinger wire, they have a square side and a round side. The square side is positive, the round side would be negative. Plug both ends. Make sure the woofer is straight. On a Rockford woofer, it has 4 regular style screw holes. And then it has these longer style screw holes. Start with the longer styles. I like to put my screws in the corners. I see a lot of people putting the screw in the middle. The problem with doing that is it doesn't get a nice good grip. Go opposites when screwing in the woofer. One of the options Rockford does offer is a nice mesh grill to protect the woofer. When doing something downfiring, I strongly recommend it. This is an aluminum cone. So if anything gets in there, it's gonna dent the cone. It goes on first, then their aluminum trim ring will go on, and that's what's gonna lock it into place. And there we have it. Fernando has just informed me that the wire underneath the hood is all mounted and in place. He added the strip caulk into the holes that he drilled there to make sure that they're nice and watertight. Zip tie the wiring up into place. We can now get a better look of those fuses. He's added in shrink tubing with the model numbers of the amplifiers. That way we'll know which one is going to which amp. He puts it on both ends, just in case you have to take both of them apart, you'll know which way they go back together. All our wires are up into the dash. A couple things we've done off of camera. This had a backup camera in it, and it didn't work. Well, it kind of worked. We've troubleshooted it and figured out that the RCA that they had soldered on was bad. Placed that with another RCA, and we've also shielded up the wiring. We added purple, so that it'll match up with our purple connection. We've also attached our speed wire up to factory wiring harness. Our RCAs are located in the dash now. And we've ran over our hands-free microphone. Now is the time to screw our radio back into place. If you remember at the start of this, one of the problems that we noticed was the radio wasn't setting flush in the dash. We made some 1/4-inch spacers to bring the top out. When you buy the kit new, it actually comes with those. Do a quick check just to make sure everything is plugged in that is supposed to be plugged in, that your front and rear is proper, and you can mount it in the dash. We found some extra screws to replace the screws that were missing. Just click one of the top corners in place. We don't want to totally attach this yet. It's time to turn it on and see if it all works the way it's supposed to. At this point, we should get sound, and all our features should work. So we'll test our CarPlay, our steering wheel controls, balance and fader. Make sure that it is in all 4 corners. We're good there. We'll move on to the polarity test. This is going to allow us to see if our speakers are moving in the right direction. Balance and fader is good. Polarity is where it needs to be. The volume control buttons on the steering wheel all work. The last thing we're going to test before we go into the next phase of testing is the hands-free microphone. What's the weather like today?
54 degrees.
I'm going to hop into the back, disconnect the speaker wires from the amplifier, and set our gains. For this, we're going to be using the EduCar Test and Tune app. We'll have it on the test page where we have our test tones here across the bottom. We have 40, 250, 1K, and 8K at both 0, -5, and -10 dBs. We're going to do the highs amp first. We're going to start with the 1K test tone. Make sure your radio is set to flat. Kenwoods are nice because they come with the EQ off. Turn the radio up as high as we can. And what we're looking for is clean in. This light right here, we want to make sure that light does not come on either one of the amplifiers during this test. All the way up. Start turning the gain up at 0 dB. As you can see, that light comes on there. That is a 0 dB indicator. We'll do the same on this one. If we wanted to leave the gain set best possible scenario, meaning no distortion, no nothing, then we would just turn this back till that light went off. just like that. And we'd have 0 dB of overlap. If we're playing songs that are older, might not sound as loud. If we're playing songs that are newer, it'll probably sound fine. We know that this gentleman is going to be playing a lot of classic rock. We're going to want to make sure we give him a little bit of leeway. So we're definitely going to be going to the -5 dB on the highs amp. Turn up the gain a little bit more. All right, so we have the light on, light is off, and turn it down to the light is off. On this, it moved like between 0 and -5. It was oh so slight. It was like not even a 1/16 of an inch. When you're setting these up without some form of adjustment, that's how close these tolerances are. Let's move on to -40, 0 dB on the sub amp. Again, we're looking at the clean out here.
40, -5.
Alright, so the light is on there. Dial it back till the light is off. This also has punch bass. If you like a boomier sound, which I feel this will help, start turning that up. And your clean light will come on, so you do have to go back and adjust your gain accordingly. So as you turn punch bass up, turn gain down, and vice versa. If it's too boomy, we can turn the punch bass down and turn the gain back up. We're all set here. Make sure you turn your volume all the way down at this point and turn the car off. But you want to make sure you turn the volume all the way down before you turn the car off, because when you turn it back on, you don't want it to be blasting you. The amplifiers are done. The gains are set. Are you ready?
Yes,
are you ready to listen to it?
Oh yeah.
It's time to do the listening portion of it. We'll take a quick listen to it, see how it sounds, and then we'll hop in with the iTest mic. We'll see what it looks like on the RTA, if there's a little bit of tweaking we can do with the EQ. Since we're done now, we've snapped the dash back in place, and you can see it fits much nicer. It's the same kit, but it gives a totally better look. Much cleaner. I can't see through the side of the dash now. Fast forward a little bit to now, where we're doing our final listen to it. Let's take a look at the output from the radio, pink noise. This is what I've come up with, which sounds a whole lot better. Just a few tweaks here and there, just to get the sound where we wanted, not so peaky, didn't have that giant bump there. Once I get something pretty close to how I want it, even though it's just a basic radio, I'm gonna bring Fernando in, let him listen to it. He'll give me the final, yeah, I like it, or I don't like it, and if it's not, then we'll go back. So Fernando felt it was a little bit too punchy, and I agreed with him. I actually asked him, I was like, you think it's too punchy? It was too punchy. Went back and adjusted the punch EQ a bit to tone it down. That's why they're knobs, so you can have fun with it. Well, the one thing we realize when we're tuning a radio, I think we can both agree on this, that more than likely it's not gonna stay the way we've set it up.
No, not at all. When
you tune a DSP, it gets burned into it. No one wants to dig into that, but it's a radio. They're gonna start tweaking it. So why do we do it? Presentation. When we give them the keys, or when Paul gives them the keys, we want them to hop in, turn it on, and we want them to be impressed. We want to make sure that it's like, oh my God, this, because you only get that one time to impress them. That's it. That's so if you gotta, you know, we make it sound the best that we possibly can before it leaves, so that when they hop in and they turn it on, and I'm not sitting in the seat telling them what they need to listen for, or he's not sitting in the seat telling them all the funness, or because it doesn't always happen. They can hop in, they can turn it on, and they'll be like, oh wow, and they'll get that moment. 2 months from now, if they decide, or a week, or tonight when they go home, if they decide to screw everything up, well, it's on them. Yeah, I can't fix that.
And it happens. Sometimes people come back and say, hey, you know, I screwed it up. I started messing with the EQ and it doesn't sound the same. Of course, now you have to, you know, do it again.
Now the nice thing is like the Kenwoods have presets and they have memory, so you can set it all up, press the memory button, which I'll do right now before I forget. Go into the EQ, go to auto memory, go to audio setup, select yes, and now it's done. That's it. And with that, well, this guy is done. We're gonna deliver the car. Fernando, if you please.
On to the next one, guys.
You guys have a great day as always. We hope you enjoyed this. Ooh, a new twist. We'll see you later next time.
Bye.
Bye.